Alright, so we're ready to get started with our Heather Geller inspired hot cocoa mugs today, or coffee mugs in my case probably. You guys know I drink a lot of coffee. So here's a few examples of what they're going to end up looking like. I've got some different templates that we can use for the mugs themselves. So there's this one. We've got one that looks more like a kind of regular coffee mug, and then this one as well. So that's kind of what our end product is going to look like, but if yours doesn't look like mine, that's totally fine. That's kind of the point. So I'm going to get started with the background today. So the first day here, we're going to start out with a piece of square paper, and then we're going to have a rectangular piece of paper, and you might have the same colors as me or different, but we're going to be adding patterns or designs to both of those. And as we know, shapes and lines make the best designs. So when I get started, I'm going to incorporate both shapes and lines. But I'm going to get started with a few lines. So I might, whatever oil pastel I'm doing, I'm going to get started with that. And maybe I'm going to start with some, I like to call these castle lines. Alright. And maybe I'm going to make a pattern. So maybe I'm going to go castle line, I'm going to leave a blank space, and then I'll do another castle line. And we're going to be adding that blue piece of paper down towards the bottom, so I definitely don't have to go all the way down with my pattern, but I also don't want to have a big blank spot. So I'm going to keep going here with that pattern, and then maybe in between that I'm going to put a different kind of pattern. So maybe I'll do, or a different kind of line is what I meant. Maybe I'm going to do a loop-to-loop in between. And our oil pastels, we don't have to push super hard with them, but I do want them to look nice and bright and vivid. If I don't go over them very much, they're going to look kind of like that, and that's a pretty big difference there. So I'm going to go back over it. I'm going to kind of press down a little bit harder this time, make it look a little bit more neat. But I think that looks pretty cool. I don't think I need to add one more. Nope, that should cover it. Probably didn't even need that one. And then we know that shapes and lines make the best designs. So I'm going to make sure that I add some shapes in there as well. So maybe in between each of my my lines here, maybe I'm going to make a pattern with those too. Maybe I'm going to go circle, triangle, circle, and I better add that back over there. Circle, triangle. And as you can kind of notice, colors that contrast with my red in this case look a lot better. So like this white really stands out. My blue stood out really nicely. The orange is very similar to red, as we know they're next to each other on the color wheel, so or in the rainbow, either way. So that doesn't stand out quite as much, but I think it still kind of works. Sometimes it's good to have a difference. Like I've got this really bright white, and that orange looks nice with it. So I would keep going with this. I know you're not going to be able to see that. So I kind of like how that looks. As you can see with this one, especially I can kind of color in some of those spaces. Okay, color in some of those spaces. But I want this to really pop. Okay, this is going to be the background. But I like how that looks. So I'm going to leave that one. And then I'm going to get started with this one. And I want some different patterns for this one as well. So maybe I'm going to bring in some of that red. And this time I'm doing some just straight lines, but I'm making them diagonal. Okay, so that's going to help make my artwork connect and pop even more if I do red with my red. Okay, I think that's going to look pretty cool. But that in and of itself is kind of boring. Maybe I'll make a checker pattern. So maybe I'm going to bring some white across in the other direction, and notice when I go over the red with the white, it starts to blend a little bit. I think that looks pretty cool. Okay, and then I'm going to need to incorporate some shapes in here so that I have my shapes and my lines. So I got to start thinking about, okay, what shapes do I want? Where are my shapes going to go? Etc. So I think what I'll do is I'm going to choose another color this time. I guess actually I might go with orange, because orange and blue look pretty cool next to each other. So maybe for my shapes, maybe inside of each of these spaces, I'm just going to put a dot. Or maybe I'm not even going to do it inside of every single one. Maybe I'll go every other line. I'll put some orange in there. Okay, and that looks pretty good. And so now it's time to glue. And I've got a glue stick, next to me. We could also use the liquid glue. I'm a little worried about the glue stick just because the oil pastel and glue don't always get along super well. So we'll just kind of have to see what works. But I went all the way around the outside with my glue. I'm going to flip it over now, line it up as best as I can with the bottom there. And if it's not perfect, it really doesn't matter. And I'm going to hold that down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And that should be about good. Okay, I might need to add a little bit more glue to the sides, but it should work. Okay, so now that that's finished, that's probably as far as we're going to get on the first day. But on the second day, or whenever we're working on this, we're going to start working on our actual cups. Alright, and so that's when we're going to use our stencils. So this is going to be kind of like the little plate, okay, the plate that it's sitting on. Here's the cup itself, and then we've got our handle. So we're going to be using some scratch pieces of paper for this, and then I'm going to need some sort of writing utensil, and I just happen to have a Sharpie sitting next to me, so that's what I'm going to do. But I'm going to line this up. If I line it up at the edge, I won't have to cut as many sides. Okay, but I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to trace around all of these and cut them out, and then just like I did on this one, I'm going to want to add some patterns to those too, and we're going to outline with black eventually. So I'm going to keep going with that. Maybe I'll use a different color for this part, and notice how I'm trying to choose different colors. I don't want to use the same, especially with my little plate here. If I used the same blue that I used, it's not going to show up very well. Okay, so I want to use different colors that are going to contrast a little bit more. Okay, and then for my mug, let's see. Oh, that might just barely fit. I think I'm going to go for it. It doesn't have to be perfect. Okay, so as long as I can see the line, you probably can't see it super well, but that's okay. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cut that out. I'm going to add my designs to it. I'm going to outline with black, and I'm going to glue it on. Or maybe I'll glue it on first so my hands don't get all smudgy. Whatever order you want to do it in, as long as we get these glued on, doesn't really matter. Okay. Our scraps, if they're big enough, can go back in the scrap drawers. Otherwise, as always, they go in the recycling. Okay, and if I'm not right on the line, it doesn't really matter that much. Somebody must have painted a little bit with this paper. And if you have an idea for a mug and it's not one of the stencils that I have, we can talk about that. And maybe you can go and do your own design instead of following one of mine. That's totally fine. I think this is going to look kind of cool together. Kind of messed up my cut a little bit. And that's alright. Okay, so I'm going to take these first, and I'm going to line them up on my paper where I want them. So I'm going to get some more glue on here. Again, if things aren't sticking, we might have to switch to liquid glue. We'll just keep going until it doesn't work. Okay, we've got this piece to add now. And I'll do the handle, and I maybe should have done the handle beforehand, but I kind of want to tuck it underneath a little bit. Well, maybe I won't be able to. I'll just line it up with the edge. Alright, so there's that. Now's the time. You can do them in either order. I'd recommend probably outlining last with black. That is the last step that we're going to do. But maybe I'll add some more designs here first. Oops, I made a little bit of a mistake. So what I wanted to do was add the hot cocoa lines to the top here. So to do that, I think I can fix it. I'm just going to go like this. I'll go around the outside with my black. And then, let's see if I have a brown here. This will work. Okay, I want to fill this part in with the brown instead of my designs. And you can barely even tell now. So, mistakes happen. Alright, and now I'll go back over with my lines. And maybe I'm going to add some shapes in here. Kind of keeping it simple for the mug this time. Okay, and since I've already got the red out, I'm using a lot of red in this project, but that's okay. Maybe we'll do 2 lines. Ooh, I'm using Iowa State colors now. I don't know how I feel about that. Oh well, at least there's some orange too. Okay, and then maybe on the plate, I'm gonna do tricky. Okay, and then, geez Louise, even more red. That's alright. Okay, then my last step simply is to outline the rest with a black oil pastel. And if you don't feel comfortable doing the black oil pastel right away for this part, we could start with pencil first and then outline it, or then add the hot cocoa or whatever. Okay, outline. Might have to go over it a couple of times. I'm going on top of the green part right now, but you could go around the outside instead. Whatever you feel better with. Okay, but this black line is just going to make it pop out a little bit more. And there we have it, and we are finished. That is our Heather Galler inspired hot cocoa mug.